Alright, welcome to 11-2. Now, as I mentioned in class, I'm hoping that I could figure out what's wrong with the sound. But if you watched 11-1, you know that the sound is off. And I apologize for that, so do your best. The sound will probably be off on this, and if it doesn't, then just ignore what I just said. Today we're going to use a lot of what we learned about, I should say a little of what we learned about yesterday in 11-1 with what we learned about today. Today's another day of terms and definitions and what different things mean. Yesterday we talked about lines and line segments, and today the first term I'm going to introduce to you is a kind of an in-between a line and a line segment. It's called a ray. I'll write it on the board. A ray. Here, my ray has an endpoint on one end and an arrow on the other end. So, this endpoint shows that this ray stops right here, and that this side, the arrow, shows that it goes on and on forever. So this is a ray, and the biggest thing to remember with a ray is that you have a point on one end and an arrow on the other end. The reason why I showed you what a ray is because of my next term. Now, what I drew on the board is actually called an angle. Now, an angle, I'll write that on the board too, is when two rays meet at one point. So here you have this ray, and you also have this ray. Now, this endpoint that they meet at also has one name, or a special name as well, and it's called the vertex. It's called the vertex. So you have to think, you have your ray, and you have another ray. They come together at one point, and that's how it makes an angle. Now, an angle can look different in many ways. So I'm going to teach you now about three different kinds of angles. The first one I'm going to teach about is your right angle. Now, what's special about a right angle, and oftentimes you'll see it marked like this with a little square. What's special about a right angle is that you can fit it into a square corner. And you notice you have one array right here and the other array right here. Or not array, the other array. And then you have your point, you have your vertex there. And so actually, these rays, and I'll draw another one, form a right angle because you can fit it into a square corner. You know, you're at your corners of papers, a lot of the corners of walls, the corners of doors, a lot of corners of windows. Those are going to be your 90-degree angles. In fact, when builders build houses, that's one of the things that they have to make sure they do. You know, they have a special tool called a square. And the reason why it's called a square is because it's at a 90-degree angle. It can fit into the corner of a square. A word that a fancy word for right angle that I want to teach you is this, perpendicular. Now, when you hear perpendicular, it will always refer to right angles. These rays are perpendicular because they form a right angle. Watch me do this. I'm going to draw two lines right here. With these two lines, I have made four angles. We learned yesterday that these are intersecting lines and they intersect at one point. So you can, it's almost like you can imagine I have four rays right here. So I have a ray right here and a ray right here. These lines are perpendicular. I'm going to say that again. Perpendicular. Anytime you hear perpendicular, I want you to think of right angle. So we have one angle down. We have the right angle. The next angle we're going to learn about is this angle. This angle is an acute angle. A-C-U-T-E. Acute. Now, I want you to imagine something. I want you to imagine my right angle, and I want you to think, I want you to see my hands and how they make angles. I am opening my hands like this. Now I'm going to do my best with my camera angles. I'll have to work on this to make a right angle. I'm not even going to try to make my hands a right angle. But I'm opening. The point is I'm opening my hands to make an angle. Now, an acute angle is an angle that opens less than a right angle. Think about you're opening a door. You open the door to a right angle. Well, if you open your door less than that, it's going to be acute. Just like with this, we're opening this ray less than a right angle. Because here, if we had our right angle, I'll do my dotted line. If we had my right angle, that's what it would look like. I'll have to shade the sun a little bit. We'll notice that we're opening not as far as the right angle. A good way to remember this, and I remember my teachers telling me this, and I think it's still a good way to remember. You know, you have to think of a cute little baby. An acute angle is smaller than a right angle, so it's cute, acute angle. So that's a good way to think about it. So let's pause here for a second and review what we learned. We have a right angle. Think to yourself, say it out loud. What fancy word do we think of when we think of right angle? Perpendicular. Good. I know you got it right. Say it again. Perpendicular. Anytime you hear right angle, or you hear perpendicular, I should say, you're going to think right angle. So we have our right angle. Next, we're going to have, or we've reviewed or talked about, our acute angle. The acute angle does not open as far as my right angle. It opens less, and it's acute, so it's going to be the acute angle. Now, the third angle we're going to talk about, and the last term we're going to talk about, is the obtuse angle. We're going to look at this. Now, I drew an angle on the board. I want you to imagine your right angle here. I'm going to draw a dotted line for your right angle. I'll make it... There we go. There's my dotted line for my right angle. Now, our acute opened up less than my right angle. Think about your door now. Now you're opening it further than a right angle, so that is your obtuse. Now, when I think of obtuse, for some reason, I don't know why, I got this in my mind, I think of Santa Claus. I think of ho, ho, ho. Maybe it's just the way I say obtuse, ho, ho, ho. Now, for some reason, I think of Santa Claus, and when I think of obtuse, and I think of, he's a big guy, so he's going to be bigger than a right angle. So, obtuse, ho, 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 obtuse. Again, this angle opens further and opens more than your right angle. So, let's look at this. We have our acute angle. We have our right angle. And we have our obtuse angle. Those are your big terms today. Remember, a ray has a point on one end, arrows on the other end. The two rays make the angle, and the point that they meet at is called the vertex. Then you have your three angles. You have your right angle, again, perpendicular. Right and perpendicular, they're brother and sisters. They're in the same family. Anytime you have perpendicular, you're going to have right angle. You have your right angle, your acute angle, and your obtuse angle. I hope this helps, and we'll see you for 11-3.